I've injured both my hamstrings and I can't move my leg now. I normally sit. It's so uncomfortable. Well, hello everyone, I hope you are well, and welcome to today's episode, which is brought to you by my Patreon members, my wonderful Patreon members. Thank you, as always. I've seen more of you have joined. I'm so grateful and so happy. This month we are reading Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens. There's lots of little things happening over on Patreon, so check out the Discord on there and all that jazz, little videos and audio files. I always say audio files, maybe it's just... Is that right? It just sounds like a weird thing to say, but yeah, I've got lots of things happening over on Patreon, so thank you as all for engaging with it, and I really appreciate it. And what a wonderful mood to start the month off. I love September so much. I am so happy it is finally September. September, October, November, December, best months of the year. This is when life takes off. For me anyway. I just feel like so much more alive in September. It feels like everything's just right. I feel like I'm in my season, I'm ready to get on with the world. But I always find that September really renews my sense of wanting to learn. Just wanting to go back to school, that just back to school vibe. And I found a really good quote that sums it up. It's by Wallace Stegner, and it goes, "That old September feeling left over from school days, of summer passing, vacation nearly done, obligations gathering, books and football in the air. Another fall, another turned page. There was something of jubilee in that annual autumnal beginning, as if last year's mistakes had been wiped clean by summer." I mean, I don't care for football, British or American football, and so that doesn't apply to me, but that weird feeling of wanting to go back to school, I really crave it, and every time I'm in September I'm ready for it, which is really bizarre because I didn't like school that much even as a child, but I always loved September my whole life. I used to get excited for back to school even though I wasn't a fan of school itself, but I think I preferred being at school than being at home, so maybe that was the thing. I really hated holidays. I did not like my summer holiday. That was the worst period of my year, and then similarly for Easter and Christmas. They were both, maybe I just don't like holidays, maybe I'm just a bit of a miserable git, but again, I really love that back to school feeling, and I feel it every single time. I'm not sure if it's exclusively a school feeling. Perhaps it is. Maybe it's just, again, where everyone around the world goes to school at different times. You know, in Scotland, technically, they go back to school in August, and then I know in like Japan, they go back to school at the beginning of the year in April. So perhaps, again, it may be different, but maybe autumn always gives us that feeling. Well, potentially September may give others that feeling. I'm not entirely sure. It may be different in different cultures. I have a renewed passion for reading literature and just going back into my hole. And potentially the autumnal season in general gives us that feeling. You know, it's the idea of maturity, of aging, of taking things slower again, because summer's been busy, summer's been hot and heavy and uncomfortable, particularly for me anyway. So perhaps that's just more of an engagement with the seasons itself, but reading seems to be primed for autumn and September particularly. So I wanted to talk about, in today's video, is talking about like why we feel this way, but also what does it mean really? When I say scholar, I'm very hyper aware that I probably don't mean scholar in the formal sense, in the traditional sense. I think I would employ the term scholarly rather than scholar. I prefer it being a verb, quite frankly. And the idea of engaging with our inner scholar, or rather that inner scholarly feeling, how we can employ it or lean on this opportunity that's given to us every season. If you're like me and you also feel that buzz for the beginning of the year. You know, scholar is someone who pursues intellectual and academic subjects in some way, usually formally, more likely formally than not, and technically usually work in an institution, because I don't have that kind of credentials. A lot of people don't have credentials. I think engaging in academia in any format tends to be kind of alienating for a lot of people. So you may have this feeling of wanting to go back to school in September and feeling excited, but then not having the credentials or not having the environment or not being anywhere near a university or never having gone to university, and then may feel like, well, you're just going back to being a school child, which feels like immature, or maybe even going backwards in life. So I just want to discuss the idea of scholarly kind of behaviours that don't require any credentials and don't require the degree of productivity that's now been associated with academia, particularly in today's day and age. You know, I said I did a whole audio essay over on Patreon about not girl bossing my PhD and realising that I don't like the culture of what being a PhD student has become, particularly in formal academia. This is now become a subsect of hustle culture, which I think is one of the reasons why I don't really enjoy it anymore, or how I wanted to enjoy it. And I realise I actually have to make it my own way of being, and it's not about productivity or how much I read or how many conferences I went to, or things like that. It's just more I get to learn and be with my books, and it's much quieter. And not, it's not Instagrammable. It's more just me being with my texts and being with my books in some format and learning. I think that's what I really want to focus on rather than productivity. And don't get me wrong, I do love a good bit of productivity. So I used to love the podcasts all the time. I used to listen to so many podcasts on productivity. And it really got me buzzing. And then actually I found myself not really working with it very well. I think that's why I got myself very ill at the beginning of this year, at the end of last year. Which is why I feel the need to really reframe what being a scholar means to me, and it's not linked to any academic prestige or academic credentials, and actually just being one with my text and how I read things, not looking if I'm reading it right or reading it correctly, but looking at how I understand the text and what interests me about the literature I engage with, whether that's non-fiction or fiction. And that's what I'm focusing on going forward with this new season of, engaging with my inner scholar, even if I'm not doing my PhD right now. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about the ways that we can engage with our inner scholar. So if, regardless of, your background, if you want to sort of, lean into the back to school feeling that you're wanting, this requires you to spend no money. This doesn't require you to go buy some nice stationery, new notebooks and new sticky tape or washi tape or whatever the bloody hell it was called, or new highlighter pens. Just stick with what you have, unless you have absolutely nothing, but most of us do not have absolutely nothing, and too many of us spend too much money on new notebooks. Cinzia, that's what I do. So this is all about, how can we engage with it? And I think the first thing is obviously reading extensively. I think it more about being scholarly is focusing on reading than writing, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but I think I've learned this the hard way, that I focus so much on note taking in the first 4 years that actually all became quite pointless. I think we all work differently, so I don't want to say this as a thumb rule for everyone, but for me, I work more with reading extensively and quite slowly and collating information that way, and taking very bare minimal notes to get through things. And I've always worked better that way, and now I'm just leaning into it because it doesn't fit with the productivity realm of well, have you proven that you have worked hard, that you read lots? Well, I've got proof. I've got notebooks upon notebooks of proof that I have done a lot of research. Whereas for me, it's actually, I just rather just be quiet with the text for a while, and I learn things by repetition. So I learn things more by reading something again and again and again than writing extensive notes. Everyone is entirely different, but it means that I don't have any proof that I'm a well-read person. I don't have lots of stats on Goodreads because I don't really finish books. Most of my non-fiction books, I just tend to read the same chapter from it 10, 11 times rather than progressing through the book, because I don't need the rest of the book, I just need this section of the book. It's just more embracing what I understand, or embracing what you need to understand, or what makes you more scholarly. And I think reading extensively is the first step, rather than really focusing on having this system in place. And obviously systems work for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be, particularly if you're someone with a full-time job and children, or you're a carer, you don't really have that time. Don't worry that you don't fit the aesthetics of being a scholar according to Instagram or YouTube. Just focus on reading extensively on a subject that you are interested in. And if you're not sure where to start, then this is where libraries come in place. I really hope a lot of you have access to at least one sort of library, but this is what libraries are for. And librarians are incredibly well tailored. And even if they don't specialise in your subject, they are very, very, very willing to go away and find it for you. If you have a good librarian, you should be able to find it. And even then, you can work with institutions. So say you are interested in random topic, I don't know, existential philosophy. And what's wonderful about librarians is, whilst they may not know about your subject, most are incredibly excited at the opportunity to go and look out for you. So they may be actually, can you give me a couple of days to find a book list for you, and then I will go and curate it for you, and you can come back and I will have that ready for you and you can go through the list. A lot of them do that. They're really, really, really lovely like that, unless you're unlucky and your local library just sorry, there's no funding, we have nothing like that, I'm not interested, I'm not a friendly librarian, so I'm not interested in helping you at all. Then potentially you can reach out to institutions that can help you. So say you can reach out to a professor at a university, if you dare, that specialises in the thing that you are interested in. It may take them a long time to reply to you, but a lot of times they do reply. Or a museum. So say there's a local museum or even a national museum that you don't live nearby. You can email that museum and say, I'm actually really interested in learning about, the Jurassic period, and I don't know where to start with book recommendations about this field. Have you got anyone that specialises in that, or a reading list that you could offer? And again, may take a while to get back to you, but they likely will get back to you. A lot of museums are very happy to answer emails about subjects, and they go, we don't have much on this, but we can redirect you in this area. We have this talk maybe, or an event, so reaching out to institutions, your local library, a national library, or even your university or a university library, or a professor that specialises in your field. Another thing you can do is, if you're interested, is you can search, say, Gothic literature, reading list, university, and a lot of their reading lists are actually available online for free. So there's actually just a downloadable PDF for the students at a particular year, and it may not be for this year, it may be from 2015, but it's still a good starting point. So you can always actually find reading lists to create a criteria for yourself, but a really fun way of doing it is actually reaching out to organisations or museums, places that specialise in your interest. Reach out to them. It could be a little tiny museum or a big museum. There may be an expert there that will help you, or there may just be someone who works there, but they were like, I love this topic actually, and I can help you. I read this and it's a really good book. So there's always ways to reach out to others that can help you, and it's a really nice way to feel part of a community, even if you don't have a community nearby. Another thing that I would emphasise about the scholar mindset is to ask questions and always be curious. Take everything you read, not with a grain of salt, because a lot of people have done a lot of work into it, but there's lots of perspectives on lots of subjects, and the more you read, potentially maybe even non-fiction or academic books, the more you become aware of good academics and bad academics. There's certain texts that people recommend to me, and I read it and I'm like, well, actually he really cherry-picked his sources. Like, yes, he used sources from peer-reviewed journals, and or maybe particularly when it comes to science, they very cherry-pick a lot of information that sorts their argument out, but they never present the alternatives. There's a lot of ways of being curious about reading widely on the subject and reading multiple authors about the same subject, which may feel a bit repetitive at times, and it does sometimes, but then you find you get through those books faster because you're like, well, I know all this, I don't really need to read it again. But even then you can skim a little bit, but see if there's differences in how they present an argument. And sometimes a lot of authors will take a side, and that becomes quite evident when you're reading. So when you read more widely about a subject, you suddenly see different ways of understanding it. And even if you're reading about the same subject over and over and over again, most times I'm like on an 8th or 9th book on the subject and I go, I never thought of it that way. Like, someone's said it in a way that I understand it better, or someone's said something in a way that I was like, oh, that really spoke to me. So those moments are really important, which is why you have to always be curious and ask questions and keep reading widely about the same subject. Another thing to embrace the scholarly mindset, you're in a scholar, is to embrace new subjects that you're not familiar with entirely and not a specialist in. I mean, I'm not an expert in anything, quite frankly, but no, I'm not. I don't know why I say quite frankly, I'm not an expert in anything, but it's little things that I enjoy. Sometimes you learn a bit more by being brave to say what you know. So say if I touch philosophy a little bit, I'm like, I'm just going to talk very lightly about philosophy. I don't know much about philosophy, please don't come at me. And sometimes you learn more that way, or you feel a little bit more confident. But yeah, I always talk about embracing new experiences, embracing outside your comfort zone, and seeking new topics rather than the ones that you really, really want to learn about. You'll be surprised what intrigues you sometimes. I know my main one is technically science. I don't read anything about science, and that's naughty. But at the same time, I've got a lot of books. So there's that. And I think another huge thing about embracing the inner scholar is to learn to adapt your mindset. We all have opinions, we all have stances, we all have, facts about things. And I think something that I've learned, whilst you wouldn't think that, because on YouTube I'm very much like, oh, I'm into this thing and I have an opinion, but I've learned with academia how to really take, not my morals out of it, my emotions out of it, and read from a wide range of things I talk about when I'm looking at academic subjects, and how I handle things. And it's been a really interesting test. I think that's been the hardest thing I found in going back into academia, is keeping myself out of it, looking at things as objectively as I possibly can. And that's actually been the hardest thing. I was terrible for the first few years of writing with my PhD, that I was very emotional or very political, and or they could tell where my political leanings lay, even if I wasn't making a statement. It was very much easily read, and learning to actually see that. And then now, many years in, and I read other texts that are talking about the same subject I can, I was like, oh, I can feel their anger, I can feel it, and it doesn't make for good writing. And now I can see why people are saying, when it comes to academic texts, but I'm not saying like never be angry, but I feel like learning to hold these opposing views and looking at them make me a better defender of what I care for, if that makes sense. Looking at them and analysing them and really stripping them down, I think makes me a much better critical thinker. And you have to, unfortunately, confront those opposing views or different topics. So for me, a lot of the time it's like religion, or politics. I always find it a little bit harder with those subjects because they're alien to me a lot of the time, and I have to deal with reading about these topics of like very different political leniences to, or very religious beliefs, and trying to hold these two systems in place and find my space in them. It's a challenge a lot of the time, but I think it's a worthy challenge. I think we need more of that skill in today's day and age, and it's something the humanities teach, which is a shame because the humanities are all being shut down and a lot of places don't teach that skill, but the humanities do. Of all the things that of all the skills that are being lost in today's society, it's the ability to think critically and nuance and have all these views in one space, and being able to navigate them and being able to evaluate them and having a position on them. It's what the humanities teach, and it's been closed down all over. Despite us being the cheapest departments to run, the humanities are being cut, and we know why. It's because of political gatekeeping. Because it's always funny when they say, oh, those jobs, we're getting rid of those ones because there's no point to them. They don't make jobs. I was like, well, it's convenient. You all say that, isn't it? Prime ministers who've bloody studied the subjects and ensure that your children also go on to study those subjects and take those subjects at A-level and take those subjects at university at Oxford and Cambridge. It's funny how you seem to want to preserve those entirely for the people who don't need to earn a living. So those subjects are now becoming elitist once again because you are closing down the departments and ensuring that your children go and study them. If I'm going to encourage anything at the end of this video, it's to bloody embrace your inner scholar and look at those subjects that you never learned at school, or you feel is a bit out of your depth. Go contact a librarian, a museum, ask for reading lists. There may even be talks. If you live in an area where there are talks nearby, you may be able to listen to an author or even a lecture as someone who specialises in the topic. You meet other people who know about the topic. But engage, particularly I want to say in the humanities, but you may be interested in more science and mathematics and engineering and technology. That's absolutely fine too. But if you are, let's help keep the humanities alive ourselves. Let's not let that be gatekept, and encourage our children to be interested in it, to encourage, youngsters to be interested in it, because it's a shame that they're being pivoted towards something where they're just seen as money-making machines rather than any kind of critical thinking, nuanced creature that can also do it both. You can do both. And I think it's a shame people are just seeing it as this is useful and this is not, based on their place in capitalism, when the elite people don't have to think that way. And that's all I'm going to say about the matter. This is why I'm terrible. This is why I get told off at university for being politically aligned. And she's like, we can tell that you're having a little bit of commentary on that, Cinzia. I'm like, well, I don't want to have a commentary on it. I want to say it. And like, well, you're not allowed to say it. I'm like, fine. I'll be quiet. And just seethe quietly to myself. But thank you as always for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was a bit of a shorter one. I've got a longer one coming up next week. But thank you as always to my patrons for making this video possible and for just bringing me joy every day. I want to also thank my new librarians. I've got so many more librarians, top tier patrons. Thank you so much. So I have Eat Your Vegetables, I have Ashley Nicole, I have Yvonne and Yvonne, I have Cody Martin, Jenny Edevade, Eric Taylor, Marina, Psycho Teddy, Wee Lauren, Nicholas Reed and Andrea Bazil. Thank you all so much for being my top top tier Patreons. And thank you to all my Patrons who are joining this month's book club, not today's, this month's Dombey and Son. So you can join over on Patreon. You don't have to pay to join the book club. The book club is free for everyone who joins my Patreon, and then there's other things for everyone up and above who pay for it, because obviously that's just how it works, I'm afraid. But thank you ever so much as always, and I hope you are happy and healthy. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.